are very important here. And one of the barriers that we identified is that many countries do not have specific regulation for digital cross-border payments, and this really produces a lot of uncertainty in the private sector on what is and what is not permissible. So there's some good examples. Malaysia is one, Tajikistan just last year with the National Payments Law, where there's specific provision made for digital cross-border payments that allows non-bank players such as telcos, fintechs and so on to also be involved in cross-border remittances from mobile wallet to mobile wallet. The regulators can also have an important role where AML-CFT proportionality is concerned, and standardizing KYC requirements between different jurisdictions, and also ensuring that those requirements are proportionate to the risks involved, which might include tailored regulations where you're dealing with a $200 transfer in a relatively low-risk remittance corridor compared to much larger size transfers where there's an obvious money laundering risk, or corridors where there's an active conflict zone where there might be a terrorist financing risk. So there's quite a big role that regulators can play. Other roles of government, I think, definitely include rolling out more national biometric ID schemes, which can really help enabling eKYC at both the send and receive end, and that will help to facilitate a transition of the use of those remittances in a broader national digital finance ecosystem. And also competition policy as well would come in here to make sure that there's a level playing field for multiple sectors, banks, MTOs, fintechs, all to come in and offer the innovation that can bring costs down. So there's a few ways government can contribute.
That's really interesting. You know, the way you have explained things, and you talk about clean energy, you talk about sanitation, water, health, education, poverty. And I believe you were sharing once with me the example of Sialkot, where without any government intervention, but these migrants constructed an airport, right? And there are examples where governments provide subsidies, but the private sector role is quite important in providing those products and services. And that's where my question comes is, what is the government role or the public policy that can be there that kind of nudges the private sector or kind of incentivizes them, that they look at it in terms of delivery, in terms of achieving those SDGs that we're talking about. It may be energy, it may be education, it may be health, it may be other services, infrastructure. But what kind of policies, leveraging on the migrants and the remittances that's coming in, can enable that to be accelerated? Mr. Kalyan, do you have any views on that? Would you like to speak a bit about it? And then I will.
So, as a civil society, we have a partnership in policy formulation, and we bring the practice and the policy caps in the practice to the. So one of the revolution, as I mentioned, the government stepped in. It brought the financial sector regulator and the telecom regulator together as the Star 99 hashtag. That's a big revolution, and we are going to see a lot more on that. What it did was the government brought this on the table together. That was a very great enabling work in terms of connectivity. The mobile network is far better than the internet connectivity. It has not reached that level. So, all the people cannot own their smartphone. Not only the ownership, the question of even operating smartphone at this bottom of the pyramid, they are not comfortable. And we have checked with them. But then the button phone or the non-smartphone, that is safe for them to use it. So that was we have designed a clear connectivity tool was designed involving these telecom operators, and all the telecoms are brought on board by the government. So it is enabling policies and the government listening to the civil society groups, because when you bring to the table the real problem, and then if you are prepared to listen, and then the solutions start coming up. And government has incentivized, that's not the end of the story, government has incentivized these telecom operators by means of concessions. But that is required, because they are, I mean, I said ridiculously low cost. For each transaction, usually 24 paise, which is nothing, as good as zero. There is some initiative, but it's not a big initiative the government has given, because telecom operators had a good connectivity, and it's not going to be costing much for them also. So it's a big revolution, star 99 hashtag for the migrant workers through the non-smartphone.
That's really interesting.
It's
so
going to
you're
happen.
talking about the telecom companies.
So the policy of the government.
Anyway, we have very few minutes left, and I would like to take some comments and suggestions from the audience too. So any additional point that you would like to say from a private sector perspective? You have?
Thank you. Yeah, just you're asking about the public sector sort of guiding or nudging the private sector. I think one very interesting area here is in the fintech space, where we're seeing governments wanting to support fintech innovation and rolling out initiatives such as regulatory sandboxes, reg labs, hackathons where problem statements are disseminated to the fintech community for them to address. And I think cross-border payments is an area where a lot of innovations have been inspired through these regulatory sandboxes, utilizing blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and so forth. So I think that is an area where government and regulators can send a signal that this is a problem we need to crack and mobilize innovation from the fintechs to address that.
Thank you. Mr. Iqbal, you wanted to...
Government role is to provide the incentives to the private sector as well. As I mentioned earlier, we have different success stories in Pakistan. Some of the areas, southern part of our areas, the more people are working abroad, and they themselves contacted with their own chambers through the private sectors and contacted the government to provide land to complete their own projects at their own. So, like in Sialkot, as we mentioned in the Mirpur areas and some other areas, the people through their chambers contacted the federal and provincial government and acquired land, and very successful projects are there. One airport was built up there, and the other one is different shopping malls are there. And as regards the SDGs, the remittances have been used in the education sector more in Pakistan. Because more and more franchises are there for the Pakistanis expatriates. They come into there and invest in this sector as well, and it's very successful. And it has been incentivized by the government as well, because the new projects, they have been given tax holidays for a couple of years. So it's the government role to provide incentives to the private sector as well.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
This is very worth for sharing. Private sector is engaging with those enabling NGOs. They are keen in engaging for migrant workers if they link it with the SDGs. So that's an interesting development. Through the CSR, all the private sector players, big corporates, they are interested to work with the NGOs, enabling NGOs, who are willing to connect with the SDG goals. They are willing to work with the NGOs. That's a good development.
We are almost out of time, but if there is any comment, suggestion, sorry, we'll take 5 minutes more. Can we take 5 minutes? Thank you. Thanks a lot. Please. Sorry, I need to admit, this is not quite a gender balanced panel. There is here a question coming in. I would certainly like to take first from here. Please, ma'am.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for the presentation. I have one remark and one question to Mr. Deputy Secretary. I'm from Morocco. I represent the government and the ministry in charge of Moroccan residing abroad and migration affairs. I'm very interested and impressed by the increase of your diaspora remittances for the last years. I have a question. Do you have any programs to support the member of diaspora who want to create companies in their country of origin? Do you have some example or success stories to share with us? Thank you.
Let me take one or two more questions first. And then, so you had a comment or something to say, please. Why don't you keep this adjourned, please? Thank you.
It's about a policy to develop us as society.
I have a comment on, first of all, thank you very much for describing your case studies and all the information from the panelists, but my comment is now, as far as the policy is concerned, you know that all the government side, most of the government are ratified in Paris that to implement the SDGs 2030. So in that sense, building partnership is very important under the goal number 17. Then after that, if you take the policies on SDGs, we are covering, according to the remittance business also, we are covering a lot of goals. But what I see is in the public sector also, they are, it's like it's the government officer's job. But they are not sometimes fully engaged with what we are intending in the SDGs. And then the private sector, it's become a buzzword. So they are more looking into some of CSR projects, but still they don't understand what actually behind the goals and what are the targets and the indicators that we need to deeply study on that. Then I would like to comment on, because I'm from Sri Lanka, I represent the credit union movement, which is the CEO there, Sanasa. So the cooperatives, they have been doing this for all the years. They have been working with the members. But the visibility is not there and the partnership is not lacking. My suggestion is to synthesize and where are all the stakeholders, all the private sector and the government and also the cooperative sector, because we are engaged with the government in voluntary national review. You know, there is a platform in United Nations, there is a high-level political forum that we are engaged with the government to produce the results annually into the United Nations. So these are the things that we should encourage all the remittance partners also to engage with. Thank you.
Wait, one question. May I request that you can type it out on this? Do you have something? Sorry, there's very less time. There are two questions here, and you already had questions. I think that was a very important point of the metrics and also education and awareness about it. Iqbal sir, would you like to take up on the Mexico? Yeah? Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for your questions. For the Pakistani diaspora, there is a special organization. I mean, it's a board of investment, is working in the government of Pakistan, and it has one desk facility also, and it has all problems of how to invest, where to invest, and which fields they can choose. For all the expatriates, it has all the information available in their website as well, and their officers are given the workshop. They have also served road shows in different countries where the Pakistanis have concentrated. So the information are already there. There is a separate exclusive office for the experts who wants to invest within the countries of origin, and their desire and their investment amount. According to that, they devise the programs, their feasibilities, and they guide themselves about how to invest, and so first of all, the protection of their investment. So there is separate offices there working in Pakistan. As regards the second question, the public sector versus private sector and their performance In Pakistan, the Prime Minister has constituted a committee of the public and private sector all involving in attracting remittances as well as sending manpower, skilled manpower. So it is about 30 to 32 members committee in private sector, public sector, where our Higher Education Commission as well as provincial vocational authorities and as well as chambers. They're all sit together in a couple of months and they recommend their suggestions to the Prime Minister. And it is not true for the Pakistan that the private sector works in the isolation and they perform well, but they are ignorant about the government policies. We are on the same page and we are working on through that committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I think we need to close. The indication now is that's a black screen too. My apologies. It seems it's quite an interesting subject, but there's quite unanswered questions which we need to discuss more about. I would encourage you to please talk to the panelists during tea time or anytime that you meet. Thanks a lot. Please join me in thanking our panelists here.